to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda this evening is introduction of board members, starting to my left.
Billy Carmen.
Zach Middlebrooks.
Adam Danella.
Hodge Patel.
Zach Stafford.
Lauren Holmes.
Nick Horton.
Michael, will you take a minute and introduce the staff from the city, please?
Michael Cardman, Senior Planner.
And I'm Melissa Tracy with the law firm of Gerard and Davis. I'm here on behalf of the City Attorney's Office this evening.
Thank you. Item 4 on this evening's agenda is approval of the agenda. I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda. It's published by the City of Milton.
Second.
Get a motion by Hodge and a second by Adam to approve this evening's agenda. It's published by the City of Milton. Is there any discussion? Seeing that there's no discussion, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Item 5 on this evening's agenda is approval of past meeting minutes. I'll seek a motion to approve the June 18, 2024 meeting minutes as published by the City of Milton.
Make a motion to approve the June 18th meeting minutes as published.
I'll second that motion. Any discussion? So we'll take a vote for all those in favor, all those opposed, and then if you were not at the June 18th meeting, please abstain. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. All those abstaining?
Abstain.
Motion passes. Item 6 on this evening's agenda is consideration of primary variances. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial board comprised of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the Unified Development Code, or UDC, and appeals of administrative determination. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by these 4 considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the UDC. And B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the UDC would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief if granted would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. And D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and substantial justice is done. The first primary variance this evening is V24-12-16135 Lively Road. Michael, will you please present? This is a 3-part variance.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
The applicant is Asiya Jalil, and the address is 16135 Lively Road. The site is a 1.73 acre parcel located on the east side of Lively Road. Property zone AG1 and located in the Rural Milton Overlay District. Applicable setbacks for a lot are a 60-foot front, 2 25-foot sides, and a 50-foot rear. And you can see how close this property is to Forsyth County, and then to the west is the Manor subdivision. The applicant is seeking the following variances. Section 8.8.62 of the Unified Development Code, Part 1, to reduce the proposed barn house and animals distance requirement from 100 feet to 58.7 feet adjacent to the north property line for a proposed barn. Part 2, to reduce the proposed barn house and animal distance requirement from 100 feet to 58.3 feet adjacent to the northeast property line for a proposed barn. And finally, Part 3, to reduce the proposed barn, house, and animals distance requirement from 100 feet to 77.9 feet adjacent to the east property line for a proposed barn. Here is the area of the property. This is the location of the single-family home, and this is an approximate location where the barn will be located. And you can see from the aerial, there is a large amount of screening along the north, east, and southern property line. The lot has a depth of 338 feet and width of 208 feet, as shown in the survey in Exhibit A. The size of the proposed barn is 10 feet by 28 feet. Due to the lot width of 208 feet for the property, there's no location on the property where the barn could be located without seeking a variance at its currently proposed 10 feet by 28 feet size. The south side of the property is the location of state waters where no impervious surface can be located. And you see right here the 208 feet lot width measurement at the top of the survey. Elevations are shown in Exhibit B. The barn siding is proposed to be oak and pine. And the roof material is proposed to be asphalt shingles. And here is the layout of the proposed barn. And here's the proposed red paint color for the siding, circled in yellow, right here. And the proposed pewter gray barn shingles. Here's the adjacent support map showing support from 3325 Long Street. And the owner, this parcel right here doesn't have an address, it's a Pros ID. The same owner owns both of these parcels, and the most impacted neighbor. And here's the support letter for Mr. Lewis. And I confirm from Fulton County that the property records matched that parcel in question. Here's a view to the north, and you can make out the neighbor's house in the back slightly through the trees. A view to the south, where is the location where the state waters are, where no impervious surface can go. View to the west across the street, and we're facing the manor here. And view to the east, which is part of the backyard facing towards Mr. Lewis's property. View of the house. Here's the approximate location of the proposed barn, which is a northeast view. And here's another shot showing a direct north view. Again, from the first shot I showed, the Mr. Lewis's house in the background. Again, northeast view and a north view of the proposed barn. On July 9th, the DRB met and had the following comments. DRB recommends approval of the variance request. The board inquired if there was a tree screening along Lively Road. City staff replied no, but the property is heavily screened along the north, west, and east property lines. The board also inquired how much pasture land the property has, and the applicant replied for one horse will have plenty of pasture land with around 1.25 acres of pasture land on the property. Recommended condition from staff, if approved, per the survey from Engineering 303 received on June 7th, 2024 by the Community Development Department. Any questions for staff?
Yes, I have a question about these distance requirements. I mean, we've dealt with this before, right? So wasn't this an issue that city council had dealt with, reducing these setbacks, these 100-foot requirements? And didn't they consistently say that these 100-foot requirements is what they wanted?
So in 2021 fall, council looked into administratively reducing the 100-foot distance requirement to a certain number. I don't recall if that was 75 feet, but it was a certain number. But council decided to keep everything as is after going through a review process before I was here. But I know that they did a lot of research, and I know city staff was involved. But the final conclusion was to keep the 100-foot distant rule, and any relief would come to the BZA.
Michael, on the site plan, can you point out the fencing? What I'm trying to do is understand what portion of the property is being considered to be pasture.
Yes. So this is the existing fence. If you follow my cursor right here, where it kind of breaks up the two different pasture lands, if you want to call them. And I'll let the applicant expand if there's an opening. It appears so right there. But yes, this is the backyard fence. And this would be the open pasture land in the front yard, I assume. But I'll defer the specifics to the applicant.
Okay. Any other questions?
Sorry,
for staff? Good.
I can't tell. Is there fencing on the north side? Is that where your hand cursor is? Is that a fence line?
Yes, so,
sorry.
yeah, this is the north part of the
Share-
property. This is Mr. Lewis's property on each side. So here's the fence.
I got you.
It travels along the front yard.
Okay.
But regarding over here, I think Hodge was asking about this kind of sectioned
Yeah,
off area.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out too. Okay. Is that sectioned off with fencing there?
It
as
is, but I believe the DRB, they asked her about that, and that part will be available for the horse to roam. And I'll defer to her on the specifics on that, the applicant.
Any additional questions for staff?
So your perspective, to build a barn on this property, this is the best place to put the barn?
I'll defer that to the applicant.
Michael, can you shed a little bit more information on the area that is, I believe it's south of the residence, closer to where the buffers are at? What's the elevation like there? Looks like it's heavily treed as well.
The survey doesn't have topo, but I'll go to one of my pictures. I mean, it definitely drops in grade after you get past the tree line. I would estimate a 10-foot drop.
A continuous 10-foot drop down the creek? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I took a quick peek, but there was definitely a drop in grade.
It goes down, slopes downward from that.
It was pretty
tree line?
gradual. It was pretty gradual.
Okay.
Yeah. The horses could roam this area, but no impervious surface is allowed inside the buffers.
Any additional questions for staff? Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. We'll have a combined 10 minutes for the applicant to make an opening presentation, public comment from anyone wishing to speak in favor, and a closing statement from the applicant. There will also be 10 minutes for public comment from anyone wishing to speak in opposition. If the applicant would like to come forward at this time and present their application, appreciate it. Can you also state your name and address for the record, please?
Good evening, BZA members. My name is Asya Jalil. My address is 16135 Lively Road in Milton, Georgia. So me and my husband moved to this property a little over 2 years ago now, and the plan always was hopefully to I have one horse and one pony now with a dear friend of mine up in Blue Ridge, but the plan was always to bring them onto our property. It's one of the reasons that we moved to Milton. My parents also live in Milton off Arnold Mill Road. In going through that process, we realized that we would need a variance because the width of the property is no bigger than 208 feet. There's no real barn that you can build for 8 feet. So we did try to keep the barn as minimal as possible. It's only a 10 by 28 structure. It's a run-in shed with an attached tack/storage room. I did hear earlier some questions about why we chose this location. Other than the south being really unbuildable due to the stream buffer lines, we chose this area because of the elevation. The water will run off, so we can avoid flooding that way. It's also facing the south, which avoids extreme storm winds, being that the front is remaining open. The impervious winds would come from the west side and from the north side, so that would leave the least amount of wind when horses are seeking shelter in that area. It's also nice to just be able to look outside from that side of the house and see the horses there. It's a really friendly, equestrian-friendly neighborhood. If you turn onto Lively Road from Hopewell, there is Ponderosa Farm, which is a 30-acre lesson and boarding facility, and we're good friends with those neighbors. And then 3 houses down to the east are the Saunders, and they have a large parcel as well with donkeys and horses. And you saw the support letter we got from Mr. Lewis. They have chickens, and they're looking forward to getting donkeys as well in the near future, and have been nothing but supportive. So I'm not trying to start a business or anything like that, just trying to have my horses come home, and would love to be able to get this approved, but I'm open to any questions that you all have.
Got a couple questions for you. The first is you've selected asphalt shingles for the roof. Has there been any consideration given to a standing seam metal roof in lieu of that?
Mm-hmm. We could do a metal roof. We would have to insulate it in order for it not, if you've stood under a metal roof that's not insulated, it's incredibly loud, which would be a little bit difficult with the horses, but in considering that the part in the front is open anyways, so regardless, the horses will hear that noise of the rain on the metal roof, even if it's insulated. So it kind of defeats the purpose of having the insulation. So we didn't go with the metal roof. We could, it's just more noisy, and our house is asphalt shingles as well, so it would match with the house.
The next question I had for you was that you have 2 run-in sheds there. Were you contemplating additional horses? Because the overall lot size is fairly small at 1.73 acres.
No, just my horse and my pony, yeah.
And then what are your thoughts in terms of how much pasture is needed for grazing?
So if you were to go like Kentucky bluegrass standards for grazing, you would need an acre per horse, but that standard is no longer the case. Really, across the equestrian world, we don't use just purely grass for horse grazing anymore. Horses are allowed 24/7 access to hay, which will be obviously offered the best quality hay we can find. This is more for their leisure to roam around and to gallop, and almost 2 acres worth of property is plenty of space for a horse and a pony. And to be honest, most horses unfortunately spend 8 to 12 hours in a stall every single day, which is 12 by 12 area. And that's not my personal way of horse keeping. I prefer them to be outside 24/7. So this gives them their choice to have that freedom and roam around. So I think it's more than enough space, and I think you'd find other people would also agree with that.
My last question is, so we're seeking a 3-part variance here, and oftentimes we'll put a condition if we were going to approve it, which would be on a foundation survey. The reason being, before you go vertical, we want to make sure that's within any of the variances that we're approving, so that you're not going vertical and then something has to be reworked on the
For sure.
structure itself. Would you have any objection if it were to be approved that there would be some sort of condition related to a foundation survey prior to going vertical?
Yes, and help me to understand a little bit better what that means. So that would be once the structure is being planned, to make sure that the structure follows all the variance requests, or?
As soon as the slab is poured, or even just prior to it being poured, when the footings or the form boards are in place, is to have the survey, and I'll let Michael kind of clarify that. What we don't want to do is, we've approved hypothetically a variance for 58.7 feet, and then all of a sudden you're at like 60 feet. It's easier to address before concrete
Of
goes in and
course.
you go vertical.
No problem. Yeah, and it's just a simple stone dust pad.
Yeah.
It won't be
Yeah,
any
okay.
kind of concrete or anything like that. So yeah, no problems with that.
So I asked several questions. Anyone else? Thank you. I appreciate it. If you'd like, you can have a seat. Michael, do we have anyone wishing to speak in support?
We do not.
Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
We do not.
Thank you. If you'd like to make any closing statements, you're certainly welcome to come up and do that at this time. You've got about 8 minutes left.
I won't say too much of anything that I haven't already said, only that it's just a family property. Me and my husband, my 1.5-year-old son, just kind of to be able to expand upon what the area already seems to be asking for, to have some animals. So yeah, that's really it. I appreciate you all's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions for staff? I'll close the public comment portion of this application, and we'll open the floor for a motion in a second. Actually, I'll go ahead and make the motion on this. Making a motion to approve V24-12-16135 Lively Road with the 3-part variance with the following conditions. Per the survey from Engineering 303 received on June 7, 2024 by the Community Development Department. The second condition is the proposed barn shall have a standing metal seam roof. And the third is that the structure, which is the barn housing animals, shall have a foundation survey completed prior to going vertical.
I'll second.
You add a metal roof
You added a metal roof
Standing seam metal roof.
matching the house.
instead of the matching the house?
Yeah.
Is that your intent?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that your second?
Mm.
You want it to be a metal roof?
Yeah, that's fine.
But she doesn't want it to
But
be
she
a metal
doesn't
roof.
want it. to
Well,
come out.
Okay, let me I don't see a need for a metal roof with the comment she made about it being loud. If there's a hailstorm or something, I think it'll frighten the horses. And from the front of that barn, it's not closed in, so I don't object to having an asphalt roof.
I don't think it's our job to.
He's okay with it being asphalt. That you were.
Yeah, I'm okay with asphalt.
Yeah, I agree with you. I
All
agree
right,
with you.
let's,
Do you want to withdraw your?
I'll withdraw my second.
Then I will withdraw my motion. I'll state a new motion to approve V 24-1216-135 Lively Road with the three-part variance with the following conditions. There will just be two conditions on this. The first one is per the survey from Engineering 303 received on June 7, 2024 by the Community Development Department. And the second is the structure, which is the barn housing animals, shall have a foundation survey completed prior to going vertical.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Hodge and a second from Billy with two conditions. From a discussion standpoint on our three considerations, I think it addresses all four of our considerations that we have. Substantial justice is being granted in approving this variance. The public safety, health, and welfare are being secured, and substantial justice is being done. We've taken the extra step in order to ensure that the applicant doesn't have to come back for another variance if the setbacks are off. We can address that early on. And overall, Milton is an equestrian community, and anything we can do as a board to support that, I think is reasonable. Billy, you want to,
I'm fine with that.
any other discussion points?
I don't necessarily agree. I think the property it's not an equestrian property. It's 1.73 acres. I don't necessarily think it meets the, would offend the spirit and intent of the ordinance based on what city council has done and said. I mean, we're reducing this property. We don't know, you're putting at least two animals on here on a small property. That is going to be there forever. I could understand if this was there for a certain period of time, but this is a new build. I think that 100-foot requirement is for public safety, health, and welfare. And I'm not sure how, this doesn't appear to be an equestrian property. And to say you're going to put some sort of, barn and horses on this, it just does not make sense to me. And it doesn't feel like it doesn't, to me, it does not meet the requirements for a variance. And I understand that we're an equestrian community, but that doesn't necessarily mean every piece of property gets to have the equestrian, animal out there. I think for the same reason you might find a hardship with the shape of the property and putting a barn on it, you can find that same reason for not doing this on this property. That'd be my opinion on it.
Any other discussion?
With what he said.
Vote.
Okay, let's take a vote on V 24-1216-135 Lively Road with two conditions. The first is per the survey from Engineering 303 received on June 7th, 2024 by the Community Development Department. And then the second condition is the structure of the barn housing animal shall have a foundation survey completed prior to going vertical. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The motion passes. Please continue to work with city staff as you progress forward. Thank you. Our next primary variance involves is a signage variance. And so I wanted to just quickly go over the standards for consideration for a signage variance. There's two parts to this. The first is A, relief may only be granted when the existing foliage or structures create a hardship whereby a sign meeting a maximum letter size, square footage, and height requirements cannot be read from an adjoining road, or B, the application of the particular provision of this UDC to a particular piece of property due to the extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to that property because of its size, shape, or topography would create an unnecessary hardship for the owner while causing no detriment to the public. Second primary variance this evening is V 24-13-980 Birmingham Road. This is a two-part variance. Michael, will you please present?
The applicant is Tim Plouffe from Jones Lang LaSalle Incorporated, and the address is 980 Birmingham Road. The site is an 18.98 acre lot located on the northeast corner of Birmingham Highway and Birmingham Road within the marketplace at Birmingham Village. The property is zoned C1 and AG1 and is in the Birmingham Crossroads Overlay District. The AG1 portion of the property has a 75-foot underserved buffer along the north and east property lines. The eastern portion of the AG1 zone property is also the location of the community wastewater facility for the marketplace at Birmingham Village. Applicable setbacks for the C1 portion of the lot are a 10-foot building minimum and 20-foot building maximum. The applicant is seeking the following variances. Request to replace the two existing freestanding signs located adjacent to Birmingham Road and Birmingham Highway. Part 1, to increase the allowed freestanding sign height from 8 to 9.17 feet. Section 9.25D1B1 of the UDC. And Part 2, to increase the allowable freestanding sign size from 32 square feet to 45.5 square feet. Section 9.25D1B2 Unified Development Code. Here's the aerial of the property, and here are the locations of the two freestanding signs, which are currently existing. As you can see, there are 5 buildings along the exterior street and 3 internal buildings, with the largest building being the Publix in the rear of the property. And this aerial is good to show the AG1 portion, which shows the 75-foot underserved buffer on the north property line and east property line. And as I stated earlier, this is the wastewater facility for the whole shopping center located here. The lot has a depth of 1,042 square feet and width of 875 feet, as shown in the site plan in Exhibit A. Sousa 4 Birmingham LP purchased the property in 2015. The existing Birmingham Road and Birmingham Highway freestanding signs were constructed when the marketplace at Birmingham Village opened in 2006. Here are the locations of the two freestanding signs, which are replacing the existing signs that have been there prior to Milton cityhood. The dimensions of the two existing freestanding signs are 8 feet in height and 32 square feet of sign area. The applicant is requesting variances for the two freestanding signs to increase the sign height to 9.17 feet and the sign area from 45.5 square feet as shown in Exhibit B. This comes out to an increase in height of 1.17 feet, an increase in sign area of 13.5 square feet. It came to city staff's attention that the proposed metal face panel did not meet the current UDC. City staff reached out to the applicant, and we received the revised sign rendering actually this morning, as shown in Exhibit C. The metal face panel has been replaced with a fabricated wood structure frame, which meets material requirements in the Birmingham Crossroad overlay for freestanding signs. I want to stress this variance is only for height and size, but once staff realized what they're currently proposing to meet code, we wanted them to update the sign. The applicant is also proposing 3 directional signs that will not require variance, as shown in Exhibit D. These are all inside the subdivision and, so the shopping center, and I'll show you an aerial map that details the locations here shortly. One and 2 are the proposed freestanding signs seeking the variance, and 3, 4, and 5 are the proposed directional signs. And the directional signs do not need a variance. Here is the adjacent neighbor map. 3 letters from the Market of Birmingham Village tenants, which is UPS Store, Sharky's Cuts for Kids, and Crossroads Yoga, and 3 opposition letters from 600 Hickory Mill Lane, 255 Hickory Flat Road, and 130 Providence Plantation Drive. Here are the current tenant support letters. And here are the 3 opposition letters. Here's opposition letter number 1. Opposition letter number 2. And opposition letter number 3. Here are the site photos shown in Exhibit H. This is view to the north. Publix is on the right here. We're facing the 75-foot undisturbed buffer to the north. View to the south, which is Birmingham Road, showing the crossroads at Birmingham subdivision that is currently under construction. View to the west of Birmingham Highway. And view to the east, which is internal from the Publix parking lot, facing the 75-foot undisturbed buffer on the east side. And here is existing, the Birmingham Road ground sign. Here's the other side. Here's the Birmingham Highway ground sign. And the other side. Here's a view from Birmingham Road heading westbound, and you can make out the sign right here. Follow my cursor. Here's a view of the Birmingham Road sign heading eastbound. And here it is. Here's the sign. View of Birmingham Highway sign heading northbound. Sign. And view of the Birmingham Highway sign heading southbound. You can make out the public sign here. On July 9th, the DRB met had the following comments. DRB recommends approval of the variance request. The board inquired if there is a maximum number of tenants per freestanding sign. City staff responded there is not a minimum or maximum number of tenants per freestanding sign, and the entire shopping center has 2 freestanding signs. The board inquired if Publix reviewed the proposed signage. The applicant replied yes, and the only comment was to update the signage with current Publix Sherwin-Williams paint colors. Several board members acknowledged driving through the shopping center and having difficulty finding specific businesses, and the directional signs, no variance needed, will be very helpful. The board acknowledged the shopping center building placement was unique, having buildings located on the outside of the property that shielded the view of several of the internal businesses. The board discussed the possibility if these sign variances were granted by the BZA, it would increase the number of business owners also seeking larger signage variances. However, the board later discussed that the city overall doesn't have many shopping centers of this size or configuration. The board inquired if the applicant had tried any sign designs where no variances were needed. The applicant replied that he looked into several alternative designs, but didn't want to go below 6 inches in size for the wording on the panels, which would make the signs too difficult to read. The board discussed the possibility of the top part of the Birmingham Village sign being relocated below the tenant panels, which would eliminate the height variance altogether. However, several board members later stated that the proposed sign design overall was aesthetically pleasing as is and did not recommend any changes. The board also discussed granting the sign variances will aid in sign visibility from the street for public safety and help the shopping center's current high turnover rate. Any questions? Excuse me. These are the recommended conditions from staff if approved. The location of the 2 freestanding signs shall be as depicted in the site plan from Columbia Engineering received by the Community Development Department on June 4th, 2024. The height and size only of the 2 freestanding signs shall be as depicted in the Birmingham Village freestanding sign rendering received by the Community Development Department on July 16th, 2024. No approval is given for variance as any requirements of the sign regulations other than height and size. Any questions for staff?
Michael, question for you. This has to do with the internal signage directional boards. I know for the 2 monument signs, there's requirements in terms of materials, et cetera. Is there a requirement for those interior signs that are directional?
Rima, do you know the answer to that question? Do internal directional signs follow height and other type of requirements? Okay. We do know there's not a maximum size. We were discussing this back in the zoning department.
Yeah.
We were looking for that if there was a maximum actual size. But to your point about the materials, we can find that out.
Yeah. Those signs would need to be approved by permit, is that correct, by the
Correct.
city?
The permit would be required.
Okay. So it'd
Yes.
have to meet the guidelines before you guys would issue the permit on those?
Correct.
Okay.
Will you go back to the picture, please?
Of the site plan?
No, the actual sign, what it's going to look like. There we go. And so the variance, just so that I'm clear, starts at the top left corner all the way to the top right corner and then down to the actual ground. It's the posts, not the actual signage in the inside of the posts, right? That's considered, right?
Correct. It's 2 different variances. So height is measured from the grade to the top
Yep.
of the overall sign.
Mm-hmm.
And then the size area is the panels internally.
Right.
Yes.
And the point of growing it another foot and another 32 square feet is really to increase the size of the marketing, if you will, or the signs for the businesses, right?
That's what the applicant detailed in their letter.
Right,
of
that
intent.
makes sense. And so did anyone discuss in the earlier meetings about expanding the square inside the posts in order to be able to accomplish that without having to increase the height of the structure?
So the
Because that's a
DRB,
lot of dead space.
yeah, the DRB actually started with that. They said, why don't we put the Birmingham Village, the top part, below the panels, then no height variance would be required. And then they circled back a few minutes later stating they didn't really like the design look, having the Birmingham Village part below the tenant panels.
Right, but you could leave it the same. You could leave it, just drop the Birmingham Village down to go into that dead space, which might reduce it 8 inches, 12 inches, 6 inches, I don't know.
I see what you're saying.
And then expand the actual wooden sign portion inside to be able to fit everything that everybody wants within reason. I mean, because what does that look like? It looks like it's 16 inches if I base it off of or it looks like it's 8 inches on either side.
Yeah, the Birmingham Village sign is 10 inches in width. So yeah, I would agree with around 8 inches of space.
Right. Okay.
I have a question. The 45 square feet, is that just the center part of it where the Publix and the tenant signs are? Or does that include the whole
Just,
frame and
if you
everything?
follow my cursor, just the sign face. This is the wood part where there is print advertising the tenants
Okay.
is where we measure sign area. And then height is from grade to the top of the whole sign.
So the shopping center name, Birmingham Village, is not factored into the actual signage?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And so the current signs that are out there, the width is the same as what is being proposed.
That is correct.
Will you flip to that Chase sign? Because that's the current sign that's out there, I think, Adam.
And that's across the
It's
street.
across the street.
Yeah.
Question about that too, but yeah, so I mean, but what they're asking for, we're not going wider. It's asking for taller
Correct. It's
from
not getting
from
wider.
the, I don't know what you call it, the
From grade.
exterior portions is what I mean, like the framing of the sign is just going taller, not wider.
That's correct. Mhm.
So let me make sure I understand this. So the 32 to 45 is just the actual, yes, that piece.
The light
Yeah,
brown.
a
part.
light brown.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if they were to expand that more, then it would be going from 45 to 50 or whatever. But then the height is the entire structure. Okay, I get
Correct.
it now.
So you're saying to take up the dead space, like you're talking about, it would be increasing the square footage,
But you could lower the height.
but maybe lower the height is
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The same height it already is.
Right.
Is there any opposition for or against in the neighborhood directly across the street that's being built with the kind of townhomes, cluster homes right there, that mixed zoning?
We have not.
Or the gas station on the other side.
Because I would imagine a large portion of why they bought there is the walkability.
Well, I parked here for my side visit and two homeowners asked me what the variance was. So I know we send letters out within 300 feet. So probably most of that subdivision got a letter, but I did speak with two specific homeowners that are inquiring about the variance. Didn't have much to say.
So really, in essence, they're just asking to raise the sign 1 foot and 2 inches.
1.17. Yeah.
Any additional questions for Michael? Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.
Yep.
We'll have a combined 10 minutes for the applicant to make an opening presentation, public comment from anyone wishing to speak in support, as well as a closing statement from the applicant. We'll also have 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. The applicant, please come forward at this time. State your name and address for the record, please. Good evening.
Milton's here, representing Suso for Birmingham LP as agent for landlord. Excuse me. I always seem to get up here and get a scratchy throat. So we have applied for this variance to offer the tenants a little bit more visibility on Birmingham Highway and Birmingham Road. You were right in your assessment. It's a 14-inch raise on the height. We're not expanding the overall interior dimensions. That's why there was some discrepancy in regards to the 39 feet versus the 45.5 feet. We were measuring sign instead of the actual backboard. The property has gone through quite a bit of turnover over the last 18 years. We're at an 88% turnover rate from inception or conception of the original development to today. And that doesn't include turnover on second, third, and fourth generation spaces. The national average is about 50%, just so you know. And that's through doorloop.com, which is one of their real estate publications in the industry. The opportunity here is to hopefully alleviate some of the tenants' burdens and hardships so that they can have better visibility on the road to everyone who doesn't realize that there's probably about 12 businesses inside that have no visibility to the road. Excuse me. The property was purchased in 2015, as Michael had mentioned, and Suso has been supportive in trying to do enhancements and improvements to the property, including some reconfiguration of the parking lot. And this year, we're in the process of now sealing, striping, and painting the parking lot. That started this week, and we're about to do landscape enhancements to actually address some of the comments in some of the opposition letters. We're going to spend about $60,000 cleaning up the property. If you're aware of the DOT roundabout that was completed right at that hard corner, we haven't had irrigation for 2 years because they had to shut down our main line. So we're in the process of getting that completed. In fact, they were out yesterday boring more. But we are redeveloping the property, reinvesting in the property, and have approached the committee, the board, about this variance so that we can offer tenants a better opportunity to increase their business, their profitability, and reduce their hardships. We don't see this as a detriment to the community or in any way that it would have any effect on any land values. I don't see that there's any hardship to the neighboring communities, but I leave that to you to decide.
I've got a couple questions for you.
Of course.
What is the current occupancy? I know you're talking about retention. What's the current occupancy?
We are right at about 89%. We have 3 units that are currently vacant.
Okay. And then can you share with us some of the feedback from your tenants based on some of the letters of support we received from the existing tenants?
So a little bit of background. I
Seeing the
used to be
plans
the
and all that.
development director for Subway for North Georgia and Tennessee. So I did the deal at the Subway there back in 2004 or 5, whenever we signed the lease. That particular location does about 60% of the market volume for this territory. So if they're doing 6,000 a week, the market average is 10,000. And that is directly attributable to the lack of visibility because he is inside without any exterior signage. That also does not take into account all of the marketing efforts that he's had to conduct just to raise awareness of his location in there. The UPS store, our owner there, has also commented and sent a letter of support in saying that he still gets customers that don't realize, even though he's on a hard corner at the point of turn-in and has a sign facing Birmingham Road, he still gets customers that come in and say, I didn't realize you were here until I Googled it. So as we all know, everybody goes to Google nowadays, right? But the visibility from the street is important to businesses like that. The third letter of support came from Crossroads Yoga, who is also just a couple of doors down from Subway. They have had similar situations occur and experiences with customers and or customers coming in and saying that they didn't know that they were there without their marketing efforts. And to further that comment, Publix is in support of this as well. Our only obligation to them is to use the exact same lettering, so we can't reduce the size of their lettering to decrease the size of their overall area, which we're going to reuse the same lettering and just paint them their new colors.
Mm-hmm.
So we did look at that option as well. We can't, our obligation per the lease requirements is they have to maintain the same square footage.
They're your anchor tenant, correct?
They're our anchor tenant, correct? Yeah, you don't mess with Publix. Yeah.
How many total tenants or suites do you actually have at the?
So we have 26 total right now.
Okay.
And could be up to 30 really, almost with the vacancies.
And through the landscaping that you're doing, are you taking down some of those crepe myrtles that were in some of the pictures so folks can see and put some of the smaller bushes and things like that?
We won't be taking them down, but we'll be trimming them down.
Yep,
Yes.
yep.
Mhm.
Cut them back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm. We'll also be doing enhancements to the shrubs on the Birmingham roadside to create a better line of visibility. I'm going to yank out all of those shrubs back to the back of the sign.
Yep.
And we're putting in rose bushes and flower beds. Now that we'll have irrigation again, we can make it pretty again.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
Was there any thought into making so it's a 2-part variance, right? You got the
Yeah.
height and you got the width.
Yeah.
Was there any thought into trying to eliminate one of those so that it was simpler to get approved? I understand the width and making the customer signs bigger. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like trying to do that, but any thoughts in trying to eliminate that height?
Well, yeah, so originally, our first mock-up included 12 tenants on each side so that we could get, them to have two, one on each side panel. That didn't work. I mean, the lettering was inches.
Right.
With this configuration, we're at about a 6-inch letter height,
Mhm.
and that's really, as little as we can get it.
That makes sense. And how do you choose of the 30 businesses who gets to be on the signs?
Well, our obligation is to Publix and Truist, so naturally they'll be
Yep.
there. So once you
Right.
take away them, that leaves us with about 24.
Mhm.
And they will all be offered the opportunity to pick a panel to go on each panel.
Got it.
Some of them may or may not elect to. We're not charging a fee for anything. But we have some month-to-month tenants that are probably evaluating their existing tenancy.
Makes sense.
They may not want to spend the money to put their name up there.
Right. Yeah.
So a couple things that we've talked about tonight. One is the signage variance, naturally. We've talked about landscaping. You mentioned paving and striping.
Yes.
What is the overall time frame for completion on those handful of things that we've talked about?
Well, so if you're familiar with the property, the hard corner with Truist, the fescue grass that we need to install is a better installation in fall.
Yep.
So that'll probably be in October. The flower beds and everything else should be completed by August. And the tree trimming and the shrubs and the installation of the rose bushes and the other items that we're working on.
Are your customers or your tenants allowed to put the stand-up signs out in front of their businesses? Kind of like some of the.
A-frames? Yes.
Yep, they are.
Absolutely.
And do they do that as well?
They do, some of them, yes.
Yep.
I Love New York Pizza.
Yeah.
The hair salon. So yes.
Yeah,
there are-
great.
Yes.
So I'm looking at some of the pictures of the current signs. I mean, it appears that some of it is in disrepair. I mean, whose responsibility is that to have, I mean, if you've got an 88% turnover ratio and there's, broken signs, I mean, wouldn't they come off for someone else? I mean, wouldn't that have been offered, or, having landscape cut back to have more sign visibility? I mean, wouldn't that be reasonable to expect that to have happened before now at this point, and then to keep these signs in good repair, at least for the tenants that have the available space?
So you may be referring to the Avita sign where the E and the D are missing.
Well, I see that. I see some
Yeah.
slate missing on the rock parts
Yes.
and damage there, and and just the bushes in general. I mean, if there's a visibility issue and stuff like that, I don't understand why that wouldn't be maintained regularly over the course of time.
Sure. Of course. The project itself has been in the planning stages since August of 2022, when I first came to meet with their office in regards to the opportunity there. So maintenance on that would be our responsibility. The tenants are responsible for their own panels. And we didn't want to jump into anything until we knew the full scope, because of course we knew GDOT was going to take our corner. So until we knew the full scope and what our ability to do the enhancements would be, we didn't want to jump the gun before we got this approval.
Yeah, I mean, my concern too would be, I mean, if we're making a bigger sign and having more signage on it,
Mhm.
to keep that in good repair and obviously be looking good, rather than, have signs that are falling apart. And
Mhm.
my other big main question is, why can't you do exactly what you want to do in the form of the Chase sign that is currently there now? And have
Because,
you taken any measurements as to that sign?
sure.
Because it appears from the pictures that the Chase sign is exactly what you want to do. So why does that not work for you under the circumstances?
So it's similar in structure, but they also have the luxury of not having as many tenants as we do. So I think that apples to oranges comparison in that regard isn't the same. I think they had 4 tenants underneath their Chase sign, or 6 if I recall. I just drove by it.
Do you have the picture, Michael, that we can put up?
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
think it was 6 under there.
I think it was 2, and then an open space. So, I mean, it would, basically what I remember seeing, and I guess we'll pull it up, is that there's a Chase sign, there's 6, and then there's a blank space. So if you move the blank space up under Chase, that would be kind of where your Truist would be. And then you'd have Chase, Truist, whatever, Publix, Truist, and then your 6 on each. So can you
we
help
have
us
the
understand
obligation-
why that doesn't work?
Sorry. My answer would be, we have the obligation to Publix to maintain that certain square footage and the certain lettering. And we have the obligation to Truist, who gets their own panel directly underneath. And those are lease obligations we can't defer.
And what are the issues with the signage in the contract, again, for Truist and for Publix that require, what is the contract requirements require?
Contract requirements are certain sizes or areas and or size of lettering.
So this one is 8 is the right height that wouldn't need a variance, right?
Does anybody know what the
Michael,
Chase sign
yeah.
So I looked into the sign, couldn't find a permit. Google Street View, it existed in 2008. I suspect this was built under Fulton County and not the city.
Got it. But is it the right height?
I can't say.
Plus or
One of
minus,
the
yeah.
one of the opposition letters will be coming up. She
Yeah.
took this photo. Maybe that'd be a good question for her.
And we did measure the sign. It's currently at 8 feet from ground.
It is.
Which
yeah.
sign?
Both of them.
Your current public signs or?
Current both signs are 8 foot from ground to top.
But again, could we eliminate that 8 foot or the 9 foot and then focus more on the signage in the middle?
Expanding the square.
Because
footage
again,
of the
this one right here, you got, I don't know, 8, 6, 10 inches on either side and 3 inches or so on top. You got a few inches on the bottom to make the signage larger, which would allow more customers on the sign. No, granted, that's a variance as well, but it would just be 1 instead of 2 is what I'm trying to just think about.
Yeah, it looks like we have about 6-inch gap between each one.
Right.
Yes. We could, of course, expand that, but I don't think we're going to be able to get 6 tenants at a 6-inch lettering if we don't go up just a little bit.
Right.
The A signs, the A-frame signs that you were talking about earlier, are those allowed on the exterior where they actually are on Birmingham Road and Birmingham Highway, or
No,
only
all
on
of the
the,
tenant entrances are inside.
all the tenant
village.
entrances? So they're all
Right.
inside, so
So
you've got to
they're
go
signed, they're
inside
A-frames,
to be
yes.
able to see them.
Yes, ma'am. You got it.
Not any questions? All good.
Thank you, I appreciate it. If you'd like to have a seat.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, do we have anyone wishing to speak in support?
No.
No. Do we have anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Yes.
How many folks?
3?
3?
4.
Okay.
Excuse me. 4.
4? Okay.
Paul Moore.
Evening. I'm
evening.
Paul Moore. I live at 15290 White Columns Drive, Milton, Georgia. It's good to see so many of you from this side of the podium for a change. I think this is the first time in 16 years I've stood on this side rather than being up there. But because this is dear to my heart, this is the reason I've chosen to speak tonight. And before I go to my prepared comments, I want to react to some of the things I've heard either in staff's presentation or that of the developer this evening or the landlord. Maybe a little bit more bold than some of the nicer comments I intended to make in my prepared statements. My first comment is the charge that you guys have is not necessarily to do what the developer or the landlord wants. It's to do what the charges of the community, to do what the community wants. And this particular property was designed actually before we became a city. It's what launched my career into public engagement in city politics, was because this could have been something really horrible. So a lot of these things that are being addressed tonight were contemplated at great length over several years with Publix corporate, Kroger corporate that was at one point going to put a 110,000 square foot grocery store on that corner, as was Publix. But it was after great negotiation that got us to this point that delivered this end result. And I will tell you that at great length, we negotiated the size of those signs. Remember, this is probably the most rural development, commercial development in our city. And as such, it was designed to be rural. I also ask that you think about how many developments do you go to where every tenant is listed? They're not. And it was at great length that we negotiated that with Publix and Truist at the time, or actually it was a different bank at the time, to limit the number of additional tenants that were on that. I would propose that the developer actually owns a lot of the responsibility for this problem. It's really not the sign that's the problem. It's the fact that the developer has let this fall into some disrepair, and I'll address that. So it's good to see so many of you, in the fact that I've been engaged in Milton for over 26 years, doing my small part to ensure Milton is somewhat special, or somewhere special. My first 8 years were just as engaged as an engaged community advocate for responsible land planning in this area of unincorporated Fulton. Then 14 years on the Planning Commission, and then 4 years as a member of City Council. In those 26 years, we've staved off the forces of high-density developers, the likes of a mega Kroger, and then the mega Publix who finally saw the light and embraced our vision. That vision has won Publix design and architectural awards, and the smaller footprint concept allowed them to enter historic communities because they were willing to embrace a different approach to the standards they were used to. That standard has now generated the highest grossing per square foot grocery store in their chain. So it's not about bigger signs. It's about embracing the standards of the Birmingham Crossroads. Birmingham Crossroads was specifically designed to be different, unique, quaint, a hamlet. It took us several years of community advocacy to generate a landmark location known as the Birmingham Crossroads, and now the affectionately known Baby Publix. It was this project that launched my 26 years of community engagement. Let's not spoil it now because someone wants to change what is special into something just like everywhere else. It's rural by design. It is intended to draw you into the interior where all the parking is placed. It's not about the usual presentation of a shopping area. It is a shopping hamlet that is intended to invite you in. The property has had a variety of owners. It has had absentee management for a long time. First, a developer that just wanted to build it and sell it, then an out-of-country owner that was not invested in the community. I'm not sure now, I guess the gentleman this evening is representing them, but it has been falling into disrepair for quite some time. Parking lot cleanliness, open doors in the dumpsters, faded painting, disrepair of the signs. It all could use a refreshing facelift and higher standards. In spite of that, several longstanding tenants are successful. Certainly Publix, the Chinese restaurant, Subway, the athletic club are some of the anchors that are solid anchors. There are no guarantees that if you build it, they will come. You have to do your part, and the landlord has certainly not been doing their part. Signage is not the issue. Signs are now a secondary source of wayfinding. GPS has now taken the place of landmark navigation and wayfinding. So it's signs. So it isn't signs that will get you to the stores. It's about having something in your store that the community wants, and then we'll find you. The changes in ownership have not helped the situation. No marketing, no budget, no advertising, and no community engagement have all contributed to this perceived problem. City-sponsored events have come and gone. Meet Me in Crabapple is an example, and at one point, Meet Me at the Crossroads. Used to create some excitement and have some draw. Maybe it's time to revisit some of those engagement opportunities. If you have something I want, I'll find you. Look at 7 Acre Restaurant across the street. It was several things before, now thriving. Try to get a table on most nights and you'll understand that they figured out what the community wanted on the inside. It has nothing to do with their sign outside.
Mr. Moore, sorry to interrupt you. We've got about 4 minutes left.
2 more lines and then we're finished.
Thank you.
The trend is not to have signage except for the project name in Crabapple, Avalon, Halcyon as examples. Let's take a look at landscaping encroachments. It's overgrown, impeding the visibility in the buildings and the signs. It's not about a bigger sign. It's about placing tenants that have something that the community wants, everyone doing their part to advertise that it's there. There is no hardship. In closing, please do not relax our very specifically designed standards to make the Crossroads different and unique. Thanks for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Mary Cronk.
Good evening. My name is Mary Cronk, and I live at 600 Hickory Mill Lane, about a mile from the marketplace of Birmingham Village. I'm asking you to deny both parts of the variance request because the applicant has not met the two standards from UDC Section 9.22E4A and B, which are required for granting signage requests or variances. Standard A reads, relief may only be granted when existing foliage or structures create a hardship, whereby a sign meeting the maximum letter size, square footage, and height requirements cannot be read from an adjoining road. As supported by pictures that were shared with you, the foliage that the applicant said is blocking both of the monuments consists of boxwoods that are located on the applicant's property, which could be trimmed right now. In addition, the detention pond located on the applicant's property can also be cut back. Because the foliage and its maintenance and the detention pond and its maintenance are under the applicant's control, this should not be considered a hardship, and therefore the criteria in Standard A for granting a variance would not be met. Standard B reads, the application of the particular provision of this UDC to a particular piece of property due to extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to that property because of its size, shape, or topography would create an unnecessary hardship for the owner while causing no detriment to the public. In response to this standard, the applicant said in their letter, the physical constraints of the layout of the village, which includes having 3 buildings within the perimeter of the property consisting of 11 businesses, is another obstacle and extraordinary condition faced with the village. However, if you read the second paragraph of UDC section 6.310A, characteristics of rural Milton overlay, it states, generally, the commercial buildings at the crossroads are oriented to the street, are close to the street, and have varying setbacks from 0 to 20 feet. Buildings are grouped informally and asymmetrically to each other to form a village atmosphere. Parking is located to the side or to the rear. And these are the standards that Paul was referring to that make this a unique area.
Sorry to interrupt you. We've got about a minute left. I just wanted to also let you know that we received all the emails and so forth that you were sent to Michael over the past couple of days. So we've read through a lot of that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is not a physical constraint. This is the layout. This is the intentional layout for Birmingham Village. And this should also not be considered criteria for granting a variance. Based on the applicant not meeting standards A and B, which are the criteria for granting a variance, both parts of the variance request should be denied. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
We have 30 seconds left.
Yeah, Michael, I'd like,
We have 2 more speakers.
yeah, Michael, I'd like to make a motion to allow 5 additional minutes for both those wishing to speak in favor as well as those wishing to speak in opposition.
Second.
A motion from Hodge and a second from Adam to allow 5 additional minutes for those wishing to speak in support and opposition. All those in
total.
5 minutes in
5
total.
minutes for
So
each side.
so it'll be a total of 10 minutes. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Michael, can you?
Julie Zonner Bailey.
Good evening. My name is Julie Zonner Bailey, and I reside at 255 Hickory Flat Road, Milton, Georgia. I'm here asking you to deny variance 2413, parts 1 and 2. These variance requests pertain to replacing 2 existing freestanding signs located adjacent to Birmingham Road and Birmingham Highway, with signs that violate the sign requirements for the Birmingham Crossroads overlay and the rural Milton overlay. The sign variance request would increase the 2 freestanding signs from 32 square feet to 45.5 square feet. It's a 42% increase, 42%. The height increase would be a 15% increase, specifically 14.6%. This increase in size would be huge, and it's in direct violation of the legally adopted Birmingham Crossroads overlay and the legally adopted rural Milton overlay. There is no hardship, and that these variance requests must be denied. The signs are a part of the Birmingham Crossroads overlay and the Milton overlay. As such, the legally adopted specifications for signage are explicitly clear, and all freestanding signage must meet these standards. UDC Section 925 D1BI and 2 that pertain to signage ordinances for the Crossroads specifically state freestanding signs shall. The maximum height is 8 feet, and the maximum size of the sign is 32 square feet, not 45 and a half and not 19.7, 8 feet and 32 square feet. The Birmingham Crossroads overlay and the rural Milton overlay were written, approved, and legally adopted following thousands of hours of community and business engagement. These standards are ruled by design and have stood the test of time. They must be upheld. The Crossroads is a neighborhood node, intentionally smaller in scale with smaller square footage, buildings closer to the road, parking behind buildings, and signage designed to fit the more rural residential area, defined by the specifics of the 8 feet maximum height and the 32 square feet height. The neighborhood node is in the middle of the most rural AG1 residential area of Milton, and as such has always been intended to fit in with the more rural residential landscape and area. To do anything other than to deny these variance requests for larger signs would negate the carefully constructed overlays that have been legally adopted and reinforced every time there's been an update to zoning laws and every time the comprehensive land use plan has been updated, including the most recently adopted 2040 comprehensive land use plan. That plan is also very clear, showing the city's dedication to preserving the signage standards for the Crossroads area and maintaining rural viewsheds. In my letter adopted and sent to you guys, it specifically says supporting design guidelines, including those for the Birmingham Crossroads. Specifically also enhancing the rural viewsheds of the city, including the Birmingham Crossroads. To do anything other than to deny these variances requests would set a terrible negative legal precedent for other signage in the area, not only in Birmingham, but also throughout Milton. All of Milton determines that legally, if the language is in place, it must be upheld unless the 2 specific reasons for allowing a variance would be met. Those have not been met.
Sorry to interrupt you. We have 2 minutes.
UDC 922E4 standards, the standards to consider when granting a variance. Relief may only be granted when existing foliage or structures create a hardship. That doesn't exist here. It also goes on to say in Part B that the application of the particular provision, it would be due to extraordinary or exceptional conditions pertaining specifically to size, shape, and topography. That does not exist. It doesn't meet the legal requirements of the BZA, a quasi-judicial board, i.e. all of you. Larger signs are in direct violation of the sign ordinance. They do not meet the standards to approve or consider a variance, in this case, both. Tenants who choose to lease the space at Birmingham Crossroads, include the owners, understood what these requirements were then and now. They have been very clear as to what the sign ordinance is allowed. There is no hardship. Please, a developer or investor wanting bigger signs is not a hardship. The standards by which the BZA can consider a sign variance request do not exist in this case and have not been met. There is no hardship. To do anything other than to deny would represent a negative legal precedent. If the owner and investor want to create more space for more tenants, they can simply meet a similar sign similar to that across the street that meets the
We're down to
requirement.
1 minute. We've already extended.
I'm sorry,
5
say that
minutes.
again?
We're down to 1 minute. We're less than that.
Again,
If you could
because it's
wrap
a
up, I'd appreciate
quasi-judicial board, I appreciate the time to make our statements into the record. I think it's pretty important. I'll conclude by saying, please deny these 2 variances. They do not meet the requirements put forth for BZA approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, we have,
Lastly, Sarah Moen.
thanks. We had about 28 seconds left.
Sarah Moen, 130 Providence Plantation Drive. Just bouncing off of what Mr. Moore said, the city worked diligently to craft thoughtful and reasonable codes that would promote businesses while at the same time maintain the rural design and feel specific to each commercial district within the city. Going off of that, putting it into perspective, the max area for 2 signs for a non-residential multi-tenant building in the State Route 9 overlay district, Deerfield Highway 9 district, which is the most densely populated commercial district, is 70 72 square feet in combined signage area. This applicant is asking for over 90 square feet in combined signage area. So that's just something to think about.
That is time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Together. Plus whatever.
Yeah.
Michael, how much time did you have for
I've got 11 minutes and 58 seconds for the applicant and anyone wishing to speak in support.
He's the applicant. He's
Okay.
signed contractor.
If the applicant would like to come forward and make a closing statement, please address the concerns and comments that came from those wishing to speak in opposition. I think that would help us in our
Thank you.
overall evaluation of this application.
To address some of the comments made by some of the opposition here. Of course, we feel there is a hardship. The tenants are the hardship. Their ability to turn a profit is a hardship based on the fact that they have restricted signage. We are not looking to exceed what we feel is appropriate for the location, but we do ask the board's assistance in granting this variance so that the community, known as the Marketplace of Birmingham Village, can be successful going forward. We've had 18 years of tenant turnover at this location. And to address one of the comments here, that is not the most successful Publix in their district, much less even this county. Their sales volume is actually about half, even though the store square footage is 28.8. Their average is 48,387. And I have a store in my portfolio that does twice as much per square foot volume. So it is a niche market here as far as the Publix being 28,800 square feet. To address some of the other comments, yes, we can do better on the landscape. That's what we are attempting to do this year. We're looking to beautify the property so that we can be a better contributor to the community and to attract more customers for our tenants. I think that does it. Any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Since the new roundabout, obviously they put a roundabout there for a reason.
Yes.
Typically, that means that you're having heavier traffic flow, right? Is the volume consistent with the uptick given the amount of new development, including the development that's directly across the street into that actual, reciprocating back to the actual business owners inside of there? What I'm getting at is before you had to stop.
Right.
You don't. No, you do the roundabout, right? Mm-hmm. That creates a constant flow. My question is, has this helped or has this impeded on the businesses that are there? Or additionally, and I don't know if you know this information, but this might be an open question, I'm not sure how to phrase it, but is it creating more potential accidents because people are driving past, they miss, they slam on their brakes instead of coming to a stop sign, which would force you to stop anyway?
Right. I'm not aware of any situations like that in historical data. It's too soon to tell what kind of effect the traffic flow being changed recently. I mean, they've just been off the job for 2 months now.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any data to support any opinion one way or the other.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. It may be for staff. Since the majority of the tenants face Birmingham Road or Birmingham Highway, would each tenant be able to put a sign on their building? I noticed like the one that Georgian Farmhouse, where it's blocked by all the crepe myrtles, could each tenant put a sign on each building? I mean,
Yes, each building is allowed a wall sign. I don't know if their rules are different from city code, but yes.
Every tenant that is facing Birmingham Road or Birmingham Highway has the opportunity to place the signage. The only one that we require is the one above their front door, which is internally. but we approve whatever signage we can get approved.
I was thinking of the
Do
city.
they
would
have,
be
I
able-
mean, do the tenants have signs on the frontage?
Yeah, sure. So UPS, Dentaltown, all of those that face Birmingham Road, as well as Northside Hospital, Tamberley, and the Tokyo Sushi, they all have signs. And of course, Truist is on the corner, so.
What about the interior building? Do
No,
they
I
have
mean,
signs?
so they have front door signage only for the interior buildings.
So you can't see any of those signs from the road?
Correct, no.
What about at night? Are there lights? Will there be lights on this sign? And then are there lights on the building signs that face toward the streets?
Yes, so part of the enhancements for the signage include the gooseneck lighting that is currently there to
Yep.
be applied again, so it'll be illuminated.
Mhm.
It will also include the illumination at the floor level or
Yep.
ground level to throw a light up there as well. And, excuse me, we are, speaking of lighting and stuff, we're doing a water feature enhancement by the detention pond. That's currently been inactive, I think, since they took over the property.
Yep.
So we're doing some enhancements in that area as
Right.
well.
And so if we got to talk about and then come to conclusion here, but if we said, hey, we want you to lower it to the appropriate 8 feet so that it's only one variance, would you be open to that?
We can look at it, but it's not going to afford as many tenant panels as we're proposing right now. So then we would leave some opportunity for other tenants off the table.
Okay.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff or for the city attorney? I'll close the public portion of this application and open the floor for a motion and a second on V24-13.
I would like to make a motion to continue this one. And the reason I say that, and I don't know if I'll have a second, but I may, but I would like to understand better the signage size of the Chase sign, it being so similar. Does it fall within the requirements without having a permit? I mean, what size is it? Is it 8 foot high? Is it 9 foot high or 7 foot high?
Let's see if we get a second on it first.
So
Second.
that would be why.
Okay.
Um,
So we had a motion from Adam and a second
Second.
from Nick to defer,
yeah, to continue this
It
to
would
the
be a
next calendar.
postponement.
to
Postpone.
postpone this until the next scheduled meeting in August.
Yeah.
I think, I agree with you, and I think we ought to go look at the landscape store over there, because they have a big sign also, right down the, right there.
Yeah.
And then I think you could, like, I understand the hardship. I think to be able to bring more customers into this complex and help people make more money, I think it speaks to what we should be helping our community doing. But I think you could at least lower it to 8 feet and then expand maybe some of the more square footage and get as many folks on there as you want to get on there. So I think there's some reconfiguring. You could even take the 4x4 on top and take it down to, 3x4 or something like that, or just shrink some of the postage or the posts to be able to get the height to a proper place. Then we got to talk about the square footage, but it would at least eliminate one variance completely, which I think is a benefit in what we're doing here.
But to kind of summarize what you're saying is go back to the drawing board on the overall signage. But the other thing I think needs to be addressed, and this is really in the owner's, the property management's hands, is to address the existing landscaping, trim the crepe myrtles back. Let's see what happens with a lot of that stuff, because that doesn't need a variance.
Right.
That's something that should be done
Yeah.
routinely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Any other?
I think, I don't know how, if the city's gonna maybe get us some measurements on the other signage, would be helpful. The Chase sign, if y'all could, Michael,
Yeah, there's not an active permit. I'm not sure what city staff could do.
just get out there with the tape measure and
I think
check
that
it
would,
out.
I think that would fall on the
I'm happy
applicant.
to do it, but at the same time, might be
More
Out there to
official. if
take
you're
Might
doing
be
it.
a little, yeah, a little more efficient
Hey,
if one of you guys check that out and
Okay,
can get us some.
I'll talk to the boss. I've measured stuff before.
Yeah, just some information on signage, like what's out there and size wise, does it comport with the current requirements or not? If that's a 9-foot sign, then, I'm not sure a 9-foot sign wouldn't be a problem here. If it's a smaller sign or if it fits within the requirements, we might be able to do the same thing here. And I think they can give us some additional options, based on those measurements and see what they can do and what might work or might not work based on what they want to do. And just get us some more information at the very least so we can make a more educated decision.
Yeah.
The end result might be we don't need a variance.
That's right.
essentially.
Right. Because I think it is another part of the possible hardship is that if this place is empty, Truist and Publix aren't going anywhere. But if this place is empty otherwise, it's a hardship on the community.
And a hardship.
And right. And to some of the comments, yes, the internet does bring people in, but I mean, these folks making a ton of money off the billboards in the world are making money off those billboards because signage still does work. And, I understand the need to want to put their businesses out there. Like I didn't know there was a Subway until today, and I drive by there to go play baseball twice a week for the past 4 years.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what's the next calendar date?
August 20th.
Okay.
But I think it's a great idea to get on the landscaping tomorrow before that next meeting, right? And, see if you can play with the sign and make it a little better.
Yeah, my bigger concern too is public safety. Make no mistake, and I've lived in the South my entire life. I've lived in Georgia my entire life, right? You can look at a Peachtree City, which is it was actually designed after the same designer of the city is the same designer who designed Hilton Head, if you didn't know that, right? Golf community, everybody drives on the golf carts, etc. Low signage, same kind of concept as what has been adopted within this rural area. The problem with that is exactly what you're experiencing right now, which is it creates high tenant turnover. It also can create traffic hazards because people are looking for signs and they're slamming on their brakes when they look for something. And given now that this is a roundabout, no longer a stop sign, it introduces a new dynamic that previously did not exist. And while it was well intended with the original design and framework of which you guys are sitting in office of doing that, I understand. So I see both sides of this. I hope that we can come to some type of middle ground or a resolution that's going to both improve the look and aesthetic and also the tenant's visibility, because it's critically important. Otherwise, it comes out of what taxpayer dollars? You, the homeowner, right? Because if you don't have the businesses supporting it, people aren't coming in, you don't have a great restaurant, a pizza place, a place to get your kids' haircut. Those are important things for the city and for the community. So I want to make sure that we get to the right resolution with this. That's going to meet both sides, where hopefully it's going to be a win-win for everybody.
So we've got a motion on V2413980 Birmingham Road. It's a two-part variance. Adam made the motion. Zach had the second on that. Oh, sorry, Nick had the second. And we have to defer it to the August 20th, 2024 meeting, or excuse me, to continue it until the August 2024 meeting.
I think postpone is the
Postpone?
correct term. I do want, just to, so that I understand what y'all's intent is here, the public hearing did occur this evening, so there's not another opportunity for a public hearing on this. It would just simply be a postponement for staff to come back with whatever information, you're looking for,
Mhm.
and then there would be a vote on it.
So there would be no public comment.
That is
no-
correct. We're not planning on having public comment,
And do you want any,
just a decision.
did you want a change in the actual sign rendering from the applicant? I wasn't sure if we wanted to give direction to the applicant on some changes when we come back, or is that allowed?
That really would not be the appropriate.
completely different.
This is not the opportunity for further public comment, but I'll be happy to speak with you
Just as a point
afterward.
of, I'm asking the board as a point of
We can reopen.
Well, would they redesign the sign and maybe shrink it down or
Well, that would be,
part
What
of?
was your
That would be
intent to
part
have
of
the
the
sign
discovery of what we
redesigned?
need to understand, given the current
I think-
scope and size of the Chase sign, and then looking that as point of reference to be able to determine whether it indeed is of the same size, shape, scope, and then we would then determine whether or not we would provide recommendation of modification of the current sign of what was proposed.
But if I may, Mr. Chair, procedurally, what's before you all this evening is the sign as designed and as was presented to you this evening.
Mhm.
That's what the public hearing was conducted upon. And to the public's point here, the reason that we have public comment is so that they have notice of what's before the board and are able to comment on it. It really would be inappropriate for a new design to come before the board at a continued or postponed
Without public
decision
comment.
without having another public hearing. In other words, you would almost be as if you're denying it this evening and they would have to start the process over again. Of
To
course,
the-
I'm sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
to the extent that there are new designs, Michael would obviously get those in advance, at which point we can reopen the public hearing.
I need to check on on your bylaws on that about, Michael, is that
We have at the same
within the
meeting.
bylaws?
I do not
But
know.
Can
not a
reopen.
public
Right.
meeting.
We did, I believe that happened in 2023,
Okay.
but I don't know the
It's not a
exact.
deferral
Should we just
Well,
It's not a deferral.
comment on the second one?
We just leave the
Open it back to public
open
comment.
up the public
Yeah,
comment,
just
and if
open
we
up the
don't
public
need to
comment.
have the public comment, we don't need to have it. That would make the
Correct.
most sense.
I agree.
So also because it's a public hearing, it has to be advertised appropriately as a hearing, and so staff could handle doing that.
Here's
And-
here's
So-
what I think we need to do is we need to have it open to public comment because we're asking them to come back with revised plans.
And if they don't, we don't need to have them
That's right.
do anything, but if they do, then we can have the public
So,
comment.
so what we could do, Mr. Chair, if you would entertain this, would be a friendly amendment perhaps to the motion that's on the table right now. That would be a motion to suspend the current suspend and reopen, suspend the public hearing to be reopened at the next meeting in August.
Okay. So I will withdraw and restate my motion. And Nick, can you withdraw your second?
Withdrawal, second.
So I would make a motion to suspend, what is it? What?
The
V 24-13 until the August, suspend and reopen the public hearing on to the August, what is it? 20th, 2024 hearing calendar.
So we're suspending today with the intention to reopen it
On
at the
20th.
August meeting.
Yes.
Correct.
And that would
That's
allow
good.
for a revision.
We'll need to have you all state the parameters of how much additional time you're willing to give each side at that
10
point.
minutes for each.
It'll still be 10 minutes,
10 minutes for
Yeah.
each.
10 minutes for each side.
Give me a second.
No need to get creative here.
I'll
I second that.
Good. So we had a motion from Adam and a second from Nick to suspend and reopen V 24-13980 Birmingham Road to the August 20th, 2024 meeting. We will leave 10 minutes for those wishing to speak in favor and 10 minutes for those wishing to speak in opposition during that meeting.
That works.
Any discussion?
Thank you.
There's a lot of moving parts there.
Well, I mean, they'll come back and present a
If they
modified version
They
of the
can.
sign.
If something's happened, if it's the same, they say it's the same.
Michael will do his part and present some new information.
Yes, I'll talk to the community development director and see what she recommends regarding your request for the additional details on the Chase sign. I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Mm-mm.
So let's call for a vote on V 24-13980 Birmingham Road to suspend and continue at the August 20th, 2024 meeting, allowing 10 minutes for those in favor and 10 minutes for those in opposition to speak during that meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item 7 on this evening's agenda is consideration of appeals and secondary variances.
None?
Item 8 is old business.
None.
Item 9, new business.
Yes.
It was very bad.
Okay, I'll leave it in the very back.
I think we're about to talk about it.
They're gonna talk about it.
The city staff is currently doing research on short-term rentals in the city, and we're compiling research internally, and then we're going to present that in council in September. So our first goal is to reach out to the boards as kind of a semi-stakeholder group, go to planning commission, go to DRB, go in front of these groups and get feedback from board members. And that's what the new business is today. We want to hear your opinions. So basically, I'm just going to ask the questions in order, and then everyone can jump in with their opinion.
What is a short term?
There you go.
Airbnb, VRBO, 30 days or less is the definition in our code.
Got it.
So number 1, are you aware of a short-term rental in your neighborhood or immediate area?
Nope.
Raise your hand if so.
That'd be easier.
Yeah, I mean, it could be informal and just whoever wants to talk and jump in.
No.
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 So all no's.
All no's.
Number 2, have you or your neighbors had an issue with short-term rentals?
No.
No.
Number 3, if short-term rentals are allowed, would multiple vehicles parked at a residence, a social gathering, impact the quality of life for your neighborhood?
Yes.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Yes.
Michael, I've got a question for you on that. How do you regulate that with public streets? It's different if you're in a gated community, but if you're on public streets, it's hard to put a limit on how many cars can park there.
In the actual VRBO or Airbnb or whatever, you can dictate how many cars are allowed to come. That's part of the contract.
Yeah, but it's a public share. We have an issue with this with the HOA.
Really?
In our neighborhood, in the apartments and the street parking right here on McFarland. It's a fiasco. But the way I understand it is it's a public road, despite the fact it's in the HOA documents, and public road is a public road and you can park on it.
I believe you're correct.
That's correct
That's-
from a legal perspective,
Yeah.
especially from the HOA perspective, which has been a thorn in my side as an HOA officer for a long time. But what happens with these STRs, the short-term rentals, if a municipality is regulating them and permitting them, I believe, and I haven't looked at this authority in a while, but I believe that the number of vehicles that are allowed to be at the property or on that property's curtilage at any given time can be regulated if it's a permitted,
Okay.
business basically that's operating within the city.
I think that would be super important.
There's a lot of regulations that come with these STRs with the number, the occupancy, the number of vehicles, et cetera.
Yeah, and the definition of family is really what code enforcement uses for citations, 3 or less.
Right. But on the sites, you can limit number of people and you can limit number of cars.
And I mean, so basically we're kind of getting all these comments and going to council to kind of see if they want to move forward with the city regulating some sort of task force, just because we have had people, Airbnbs pop up, but we don't get to cash any of that revenue.
Right.
Because there's no regulation for it, essentially.
But
All right. Number 4, would it matter if short-term rentals were allowed on a large lot versus a smaller lot inside a subdivision?
Yes, probably so. I would expect, just based on how our neighborhood works with the townhomes and single families. I think if you had people coming and going, it wouldn't negatively impact the townhome people for sure, at least in our neighborhood.
Think back to the number of people and the number of cars would need to be regulated. I think Michael, the earlier comment you had around the revenue, community gets the revenue because those individuals then come and spend money at the restaurants and stuff like that. But the city getting the revenue and the tax revenue would just still be derived from the, whatever taxes are associated with each parcel.
Permit fees.
Yeah.
Right. And we haven't created that fee chart yet. So we're kind of in the infancy stage of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fire marshal would have to come in for the number of people if there's. But I think someone would have to complain before that's going to happen, that the fire marshal would show up.
Number 5, would you object to a short-term rental if the city oversaw the operations with city requirements ordinances?
No.
I would say probably not, because if it comes to an enforcement perspective, if the city's issuing the permit, I'd expect them to also enforce something if it's related to parking or the number of folks that are at the house.
Any additional comments or suggestions for staff?
Is there a large number of short-term rental requests coming into the city?
From my understanding, the majority have been on large lots. Somebody wanted to come in and have that farm experience in Milton rather than renting a townhome in Crabapple.
Yep. You can also set the number of days. So it has to be a 3-day minimum. That's another parameter you can put around it to make sure you get the right clientele and the right folks that want to, be a part of the community for a couple days.
Noted.
That's right. That's right.
Michael, when do you think this will get presented to city council or kind of get vetted further along?
Yeah, we're shooting for mid to late September. But we're going to do this questionnaire for every board, come back and then put together a plan. And then I think we'll do 30 to 40% of a full plan before, because if we go up to council and they say, we don't want this in our city, we won't want to do the full, if you want to call it, task force and all the research, unless we know that they want to move forward with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Item 10 is adjournment. I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
A motion